Creating Windows Movie Maker Transitions in Blender 2.8, Episode 2. There are several different categories of transitions, with some of them using more advanced techniques than others. It is important to note that some of these need to be done in the 3D space. A lot of the transitions can be made in a similar way. The first transition category that I'm going to cover is diagnals. I will also cover some of the ones from the patterns and shapes category. You can use the compositor, however, there are some additional steps that you'll need to take. In this case, we are going to be using booleans to reveal the next video. In more complicated cases, using booleans won't work. These cases will require a little more setup. Here I already created the file. I can move this wedge and it will cause the object to disappear and show the one underneath. If you're going to use the compositor, you will need to enable transparency in the film settings of the render tab in the properties editor. I will return to this file to show you the preparation for the next method. I will start a new file and take you through the steps. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to open up a new file. I will delete the default cube. I will reset the rotation, Alt-R, Alt-G to reset the location, G-C, move it up, about 14. Then I'm going to select the light. I'm going to change the light so it's a sun lamp. And reduce the strength of the light. And then we'll also reset its location. And then I'm going to
pork sandwiches and beans, green beans.
Say that I also want this because I don't want to be able to select the camera or the light. Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to go into the camera view, Shift A. I'm going to add a plane. Go into edit mode and scale it. Then scale along the X. Scale it some more along the X so that like that. Just a little bit outside of the view. Now we're going to Shift A and we're going to add a cube. Scale it so that it covers the whole area. Gonna select this, scale it along the X. So now that makes a triangle. There was easier ways to do that, but didn't really bother me none. Screw that far. And we are going to make this not render. We're going to go to the object context, the viewport display. We're going to display it as wire. We're going to select our plane, add modifier, Boolean. We're going to select our cube. We're going to move the cube out of the way. And there we have our setup. If you want to use compositing, instead of another plane right underneath this one, I'm going to go to Film, Transparent. To set up the shading or the material for this cube, I'm going to go to Shading. Wait for just a few moments. Go to Material. Diffuse. And then we're going to choose texture. In this case, I'm just going to use an image texture. I don't have a video that I want to use. Let's see. Images. We'll use this one. Could also use movie. The sun is a little bit too bright. I'm gonna have to change that. Light. Strength is, yeah, it was too bright. I think 5. There you go. To create a tileable image sequence that swaps colors over a period of 48 images, 2 seconds at 24 frames per second. With this as a reusable template, I can change the duration of the transition. Here is another file where I have set up everything ahead of time. As I scrub through the frames, the image sequence progresses by 1 image. The image sequence is linked to the alpha input of the principled shader. I have also linked a vector mapping node and a UV map node to the image sequence so I can scale the size of the image so that it repeats multiple times. I'm going to start a new file and take you through the steps. I'm going to skip rendering the images, however, I will talk about the render settings that I used. So here is the setup. In this case, I'm actually using the principled shader. Here's the handy dandy stand-in image 2. The image sequence, vector mapping node, and UV mapping node. I will go to the Blender file. Delete that. We don't need the boolean in this case. I'm going to go to shading. We will need that. We won't need the diffuse node. We go to the principled shader. Principled shader. Base color to the surface. And what we'll be needing is the alpha. So we're going to go to Shift A and we're going to add an image texture. We're going to open transitions, and here is the image sequence that I rendered out. Whenever I rendered out the image sequence, I rendered out a square, as you can see in here. The resolution is a square. I rendered it out as PNG. Whenever it comes to alpha, white is completely solid. Alright, white is all visible, and black is completely transparent. To make this object has keyframes. One keyframe makes the shape turn into that, and the other keyframe makes it turn into that. So as I do this, it has the same effect of changing the color from one to another over the course of a few frames. Now we're going to go back to our new file. We can select them all by Shift, by holding by B, or by pressing A, which I'm going to press A. I'm going to do Open Image. I'm going to link this to the alpha. It's on frame 1. Okay. Going to Shift A, and I'm going to add a vector mapping node. I'm going to Shift A, and then I'm going to add a UV map node. This will give information to the vector mapping node from the object. Now we're going to scrub through the frames to get to 24. We're just going to scale this up to what we want. Then we're going to scale this up to what we want. approximately square. Go into camera view. Now, as you can see, one thing I forgot to do, click auto refresh. So as you scroll through the frames, we have a transition. Now, there is some aspect of this plane left. So after the last frame, you'll have to do a keyframe to make the pane not render. So to do that, I'm going to insert a keyframe on frame 47, go to frame 48, uncheck that, then insert a keyframe. In Blender 2.79, you could also insert keyframes for visibility in the viewport, but 2.8 you can't. I do kind of miss that. Here, I have set up two examples from the reveals category, as well as an example from the shatters, the sweeps and curls, and the wipes category. I will show you the file and then take you through the steps to recreate each one. So in the reveals category, there is one where the image rotates to reveal the one underneath. In this case, what we do is we have two planes and an empty. The empty is close to perfectly in between them. We have the two planes parented to the empty. Then whenever we rotate along the Y, one thing to note is the bottom pane has been rotated by 180 degrees, so that whenever it is rotated to the top, it is facing in the correct direction. In this case, this is another one from the reveals category, where the image rotates into place. So the image would start off like something like this. Your camera would be over it, of course. Then the image, you can rotate it along the z-axis and rotate it into place. If my mouse wants to behave. Here is an example from the sweeps and curls category. this one. This object had to be subdivided quite a bit, as you can see. Compared to everyone others, that's just a square, or technically a rectangle. I added a few constraints to it to try to fix a problem I was having. Didn't quite work out. Still some issues to be solved. Not many. I made this kind of hook shape as a path. Then rotated it by 45 degrees. I added a curve modifier to the plane. Then whenever I move the curve, it's more interesting to see this in the camera view. So I rotate as I move the curve. It flips like a page. So here would be the next video. And then there would be the current video, and here would be the next video. I can change the rotation of this to change the style of the flip, or the reveal. The next one is from the shatters category. This one has a few more things that has to be set up. I had to add a particle system. And let's see, somewhere an explosions modifier. Let's see, in the particle settings, I know I have force field. It's set to a charge, which this has a charge force field. So what happens is as I scrub through the frames, the force field of the particles makes it attract to the cube. So we get this one right here where it goes off into the corner. I have the particles set to a very specific amount. Because that is the number of faces this object has. Let's see, faces is 420. And I have set the particles to being, oh wait, it was 240 faces. And I've set the particles to being 240. So, one per face. set the distribution to grid. I have made it so that the particles themselves don't render. And I have enabled the force field settings for a particle so that their charge will be attracted to this. And then as I go through the frames, oh yeah, and I added an explosion modifier. If I cut edges, it kind of, the shapes become strange, so I didn't do that. I added a build modifier to erase the object, as it sometimes likes to not do exactly what I want it to do. So that as soon as it goes out of frame, it disappears. And last category is the wipes category. I'm still working on perfecting this one. Go into rendered mode. As you can see, it is visible. Move it along the Y axis. And as it goes past the 0 Y, it becomes invisible. Still working on trying to make a smoother transition, but as of right now, that's pretty decent. The last category of transitions that I'm going to talk about are in the contemporary group. These can be created by moving the camera instead of the objects. This was a long topic, and if you're still here, I would like to thank you for watching the whole video, and happy animate video editing. If there was something that I did not cover, and you would like to know about, please comment in the comment section below. In the final part, I'm going to create Windows Movie Maker visual effects in Blender.